everyone, welcome to Forbes Flash. Let's talk about the biggest business news from this week. This was a big week for Forbes list. We dropped new rankings of business schools, highest earning actresses, and more. Here are some of the highlights. Let's start with some of the biggest names in hip-hop and their even bigger paychecks. The highest earner of them all is Diddy, who brought in a remarkable $130 million just over the past year. He was also just named one of our 100 greatest living business minds, so it's a pretty good year to be Sean Combs. In other inspiring news, we released our third round of the world's top social media influencers this week. This time, we looked at 3 new categories: fashion, parenting, and pets. Yep, Grumpy Cat is now officially the most influential pet out there. And of course, he hates it. Check out the rest of the honorees with hashtag top influencers across social media. Last, but of course not least, is our newest ranking of America's best business schools. Congrats goes out to Wharton alumni, who can boast of the school's first ever time at the top of our rankings. MBAs from the 2012 program have an average post-program salary of $225,000. Falling to second place is Stanford, though students there can still be proud of having the lowest acceptance rate in the world. Just 6% get in. Now for an intriguing story from our southern neighbor. Did Mexico drop $5 million on a quote-unquote unlimited stealth spy tech program? Data recently leaked to Forbes indicates that the country is the first known buyer of surveillance tech that silently spies on calls, texts, and locations of any mobile phone user. The price for the system could have ranged between $5 million and $20 million, and comes at a time when Mexico is wrapped up in a spyware scandal. On this one, we're going to say stay tuned. Unavoidable news in the tech world broke this week as Twitter announced that they're testing tweets with 280 characters, double the current limit. The test is currently live in every language except Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. And while only a small group of lucky users has the lengthened tweet capacity right now, a Twitter spokeswoman confirmed that the company plans to roll out the feature to everyone over time. Joining us now is Forbes Assistant Managing Editor Mike Ozanian to talk about the Take a Knee movement. So this is something that started last year with Colin Kaepernick, but has really become a major news story within the past few weeks, obviously because, Trump tweeted about it, it's back in the news again. But let's talk a little bit about the financial impacts of it. That's something that you've been writing about recently, correct?
That's right, Emily. The main thing here, I think, is people can pull away from the president for a minute and not focus on his latest tweet. As you pointed out, this started last year, and the bad impact has been fans, a big portion of them, object to people taking a knee during the national anthem. They don't mind the interlocking of arms while they're standing up. They don't mind protests, perhaps, off the field, but during the national anthem, that irks a lot of people, and we're seeing this reflected in television ratings. Ratings were down 8% last year. They're down 11% through 3 weeks of this season. So we're seeing financial ramifications because the broadcasters have to do make goods to their advertisers. And some Wall Street analysts are estimating combined could be over $200 million this season.
So far. So if this continues throughout the entire season, what kind of number would you
We'll
put
have
on
to
it?
see how the ratings go, which way this continues. The president may have actually given the NFL players taking a knee an out because they now have unified and seem to be doing more of the interlocking arms like the Dallas Cowboys did standing up prior to the anthem. That doesn't seem to bother fans as much as what the Pittsburgh Steelers did that same weekend, for example. We're talking about week 3, where they stayed in the locker room. That really bothered a lot of people.
Well, and that was a specifically interesting game because Alejandro Villanueva went out, and his jersey then became the most purchased.
That's right.
But he later said that that was a mistake. So is that something that, with jersey sales, is that going to continue?
Yeah, who knows what his teammates said to him, right? Last year, wide receiver Brandon Marshall lost a small endorsement deal with a car dealership, I believe it was, because he was taking a knee during the anthem. This year, they're looking at Von Miller's. Apparently, that's under review by a certain sponsor because he's been with the Take a Knee movement. So we're going to have to see how this evolves. It almost seems to be week to week. The president making tweets and comments about it is, now he's saying he's spoken to Jerry Jones and they're going to stand, Jones being, of course, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. So this is a continuing story, but we can't measure the exact impact it's had on TV ratings because more people are, for instance, streaming games. That's
Right.
another way to view the telecast. But certainly, if you look at movements like @BoycottNFL and you look at comments on social media, it's definitely having a negative impact. Because just think of the math. How many people do you know that say, I've never watched the NFL before, but now that players are protesting during the national anthem, I'm going to watch. But we do hear quite a lot of people say, now that people are protesting during the national anthem and not standing, I'm no longer watching.
But do we think that the conversation around it is maybe unifying people around the idea of football?
I think most people, the vast majority of people, watch football for the same reason they say go to the movies, for entertainment. Kind of like to get away from the day-to-day stuff of politics and any other news that they may see on television or people may chat about. They don't want to be inundated when they go to be entertained with politics, regardless of what those politics are.
But it seems like our president has kind of crossed that line quite a bit. So he says that the NFL will be a failing business if this continues. What does that mean to you?
I think, like many other things, he's exaggerating there. But I do think if players continue to protest during the national anthem, and by protest I mean things like take a knee, or Odell Beckham of the Giants after he scores a touchdown going into the end zone and feigning like he's being a dog and he's urinating. They don't want to see that, towards, on a certain person in politics whose name shall remain anonymous, or raising a clenched fist in the air during a score for some sort of protest of social justice, whatever that may be. They don't want to see that. They're there to be entertained. And I think they'll continue to lose fans if they push that hard.
So what are you going to be watching for in the next few weeks?
Well, what I'm going to be watching for is how these protests and awareness movements towards social issues evolves. If it's something that happens during the national anthem, taking a knee, then I am going to basically be looking at TV ratings and see how much and how far they continue to fall. If it evolves into something else where the league comes together and says, you know what, this is bad business. We've got to find another way to do this, such as standing, interlocking the arms, whatever they may do, then I think that the ratings could turn around and get back to a more normal level.
But they were already falling before, correct?
Well, it depends how you measure it. Some people were saying last year they were falling because of the presidential debates and the primaries and all that, and they were going to bounce back this year. That hasn't happened. They're falling worse this year than they did last year.
Got it. So definitely something to keep an eye on. And thank you so much for joining us. It's a story that'll
Thank
continue
you.
evolving.
My pleasure.
Our Under 30 Summit is coming up next week in Boston. Make sure you're following along on all of our social channels @Forbes. If you're going, or even if you aren't, the hashtag to keep an eye on is #Under30Summit. See you there. Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear your feedback. Tweet it using #Forbes Flash. See you next week on Friday morning.